Hi there, welcome back to Mastering the Young Band. Today I want to talk about a strategy that you can use with your beginner and honestly all of your brass players, and that is teaching your brass players positions rather than fingerings. Especially for those of you that are like me that can have mixed brass classes or even maybe one brass class with all your brass players in it, to go through and teach notes with each instrument's specific fingering can be very time consuming. For instance, if you are doing the note concert D, if you have a brass class, you'll say, okay, trumpets, that's valves 1 and 2. Okay, trombones, that's 4th position here. Baritones, that's also valves 1 and 2. And horns, that is your first valve. And to go through all of that, it's just very time consuming. If you can teach your kids brass positions instead, you can say one position and it pertains to everybody, exception of horns in some cases. So here's how it works. If you think about your trombone positions, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then equate those to the brass positions, then you have a framework for teaching all of your brass players how to do all of their different fingerings. So how this works, I'll go ahead and flip it this way. For those of you that don't know, that aren't maybe brass players or maybe in your pedagogy classes didn't get a lot of training on brass, here's how this works. So when you play a brass instrument and you vibrate through, when you do an open position, you're basically blowing the air straight through the horn. That's the shortest length of tubing for the brass instrument. The next longest, as you can tell on a trumpet, the next longest tube is second valve. So what happens is when you push down that second valve, it goes through that additional amount of tubing. The next longest is the first valve. You add in this much tubing for a trumpet. Third valve, you add in this much tubing for the trumpet. And then obviously when you have all the different combinations, you're adding more and more tubing. So for your brass fingerings, each time you do a valve combination, you're adding more and more tubing on. So we can use that to our advantage when we're teaching positions. So what I do with my valved brass is we call first position open or no fingers. Second position is second valve. Third position is first valve. Fourth position, so the next amount of tubing that's the longest is when you do first and second valve, that's fourth position. The next amount of tubing that's the longest is fifth position, that's 2 and 3. Sixth position is valves 1 and 3. And for trumpet players in their first learning, you do want them to take their slide out about 1/3 of an inch or so. Okay, so sixth position. Seventh position is the longest valve combination you can use. That's when you push all 3 valves down and you're actually going through the entire length of the tubing and the entire instrument. Again, for those of you that aren't brass players, the reason why seventh position feels different on the embouchure is, again, you're having to push air through the entire instrument. It just feels like there's more back pressure than it is when you play first position. Obviously, the advantage of it is this. You can teach that to your brass class, and again, with the exception of horn, you can talk common positions. You can go, okay, what position is that note, brass? Second position, great. What position is that, brass? Fourth, great. Even given instructions like brass, we're gonna play this, we're gonna go from first to second position, I play, you play, and then you play, and it's just an efficient way of getting your brass to say their fingerings rather than going down each instrument and trying to explain to them what their fingerings are. For beginners, this has huge implications and just being way more efficient for your brass classes to be able to use positions. In your second and third year bands, where the brass positions really come into play is with key signature. Think of concert B flat. The critical note, the important note of that key is the 7th scale degree, concert A. Rather than going, okay, this instrument's second position, trumpet second valve, and doing all that kind of stuff, you can just say, brass, critical note is what? Then they'll say their critical note, what position? And the entire brass section saying second position. So that's one way that you can make your brass more efficient, is to talk through their positions rather than through all their different fingerings. Some years I've just made a slide on my Google Slides where I have positions just up on the board, and it just says first position, no valves. Second position, second valve. Some years I've created a chart, but whatever system you use, you can have your brass players practice it this way. So when you first introduce it, you can either have a piece of paper, you can have a slide to show them what the positions are. And then what we do is I set my metronome to 72, and we go, okay, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, stop. Again, and ready, go. First, and so on. Now, when we first learn it, I let the kids look at the board or the piece of paper, whatever I've decided to do that year to teach them, and they're actually looking at it. And we do it many, many times, just looking at the paper, getting them used to those combinations. Once they start getting comfortable, we go, okay, turn the paper over. I switch the slide, or I make them close their eyes, and then we practice it that way. And of course, I'm scanning the room and just seeing if about 90% of the class has it. You'll find the kids learn this so easily, and then we start having fun with it. We'll make it faster, and we'll go quarter notes. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, stop. Again, and go. First, and we'll go through it that way. Sometimes even for fun, we'll do 8 notes. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, stop. And I'll ask for a volunteer to show that to the entire class, because your overachiever kids love showing that. Now, the other advantage to teaching your brass players positions like this, of course, they've just learned their chromatic scale. If you think about the chromatic basics page in my Essential Foundations warm-up, chromatic basics is first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then back to their low partial open position. So you've taught your brass players the basic chromatic scale, and they don't even know what that is yet. They just know it as positions. Then when you transition to chromatic basics, you'll see some kids' light bulbs go on, and they'll even say, didn't we do this with positions? Yeah, we did. So if you haven't used brass positions, I highly recommend it. On my website, mikeperezband.com, I'll just put a simple document up on my website that you can just copy and use with your brass players that equates those positions with their valve combinations. One quick note too, if you have 4 valve euphoniums or tubas, it's really easy. You just have to teach them, okay, your new sixth position is 4th valve. Your new 7th position is 2 and 4. That's it. It's that easy for the kids. So you don't have to explain them all the different notes on the new 4th valve. You just say 6th position's now this, 7th position's now that, and boom, they got it like that. Highly recommend that strategy. I've been using positions in my brass classes now for about 10 years. It's just way more efficient. It teaches my kids chromatic scales. It's a fantastic skill for your middle level learners to learn. Thanks.